Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to a new video. So this time of the year, I get asked this question very often. How do I store my F80 M3 during the colder months? Now, if you guys are familiar with my story and kind of what I do here, the F80 is not my daily driver. This is the weekend car, the fun car, whatever you want to call it. I have an F150 that you guys have seen on the channel that I drive every single day. It's kind of my main vehicle that I use, and this is the fun car. It's a vehicle that I personally love and I care for, but at the same time, it's something that I know is going to get used. To me, the F-150, as much as I love it, it's more of an appliance. It's something that I know is going to get used and abused. I haul the kids around in it when I need to, and it handles all the inclement weather that we see in New Jersey, while the F80 stays nice and clean, looking pretty in the garage during the colder months. So I know some of you are in a similar situation where you like to store your cars or your F80, F82, M3, M4 in the garage during the colder months. So what I want to do was go over the steps that I take in order to store my car. Now, I want to preface this by saying that I don't store this car for 4, 5, 6 months at a time. This is more of a temporary storage solution. So here in New Jersey, we do get some bad winter weather once in a while. But during the winter months, sometimes we see, a 50, 60 degree day once in a while where the streets are nice and clean and dry, and I get the itch to drive this car. So I don't like to store it for an extended period of time just because I know myself and I like to drive my cars when I can. So if there ever is a warmer day in the winter months, I will take this car out. So this is more of a temporary solution. This is not more of a permanent solution where you're going to store your car for multiple months at a time. Granted, the steps that I'm going to kind of mention in this video is going to be very similar. There's a couple steps that I'll mention at the end of this video that I think you should take if you're storing it for longer than I do. So if you're looking to store your car just as I do during the colder months, you can follow this procedure and use the products that I use to make sure your car stays happy and healthy during the colder months. So the first thing that I like to do before I even bring the car in the garage is go ahead and get the gas tank filled up as much as possible. My preferred gasoline that I get is Shell 93. That is what I always get in all of my vehicles. And the main reason why I like to fill up my tank prior to storing it for an extended period of time is because it reduces the chances of condensation building up in the gas tank. Now, the reason why I like to fill up my gas tank prior to storing for an extended period of time is because it reduces the chance of condensation buildup. If your tank is as full as possible, there's less room for that condensation to build up. And the reason why condensation or water in your gas tank is bad is because one, water mixes with gasoline, it dilutes it, so it's not going to be the grade that you get, which is 93. So it may run a little rough when you first start it up. So filling it up completely reduces that chance because the gasoline is filled up as much as possible, so there's no room for the condensation to build up. And also, obviously, this is not really pertaining to me, but if you're storing your car for a longer period of time, if condensation builds up enough, it can also create rust in your gas tank and your lines. It will not make the car run properly and can cause issues down the line. The next step after I bring it home from getting gas is to wash the car thoroughly. If you guys know me, you guys have seen me wash this car or all of my cars on the channel several times. I am an avid weekend detailer, if you want to call me that. But I am somebody that enjoys the hand washing process and doing it myself to make sure that I'm maintaining the paint properly. I have ceramic coated the car. Most of the car is PPF'd as well. So I'm a very kind of big advocate of keeping your paint looking proper. So if you have the means and the ability to wash your car or hand wash your car yourself, I highly recommend doing that. If you don't, go to a very reputable detailer, car wash shop. Don't go through a drive-through or anything like that. Go to somebody that is highly reputable, that does hand washes and that actually knows how to properly wash a car, and get your car thoroughly washed. Get the undercarriage sprayed. Make sure you spend some time on it because this is going to be the last wash prior to the storage, whatever amount of time that you're going to store it for. And the reason being is you don't want your paint dirty when you are storing it. You don't want bird poop, you don't want grime, dirt, and anything that may be sitting on the paint for an extended period of time because you don't want the paint to get messed up, scratched, or etched. So it's always a good measure to make sure your paint in your car is properly cleaned before you store it. Next step that I do is actually crack the windows open. And this is more pertaining to people that store for a longer period of time. And obviously this is going to depend on where you store your car. If you store it in a garage like this, kind of temperature controlled, it's not that big of a deal. But if you store it in a barn or an area where temperature, that changes drastically, this may not be for you. But I do recommend cracking your windows open ever so slightly. And the main reason is because, one, you want the circulation, you want the air to kind of move through the car. You don't want the interior to stay stagnant. Keep in mind, you just washed the car, so if you wipe down the interior, use some products, there may be some wet areas or some damp areas. And if you keep the windows completely closed and you store it, there is a chance of mold or something to grow over that time because the air is not moving at all. So opening them up just a crack is going to help keep that air moving, keeping things circulated, and ultimately going to keep your interior in a much better condition. Now, as I mentioned, it depends on where you're storing it. If you're storing it in a barn or somewhere where it's not temperature controlled or you can keep an eye on it, cracking the windows open, it's up to you if you want to do that. But for me, in my environment where I store my F80, I like to crack my windows open ever so slightly. Another quick worthy mention, if you're storing your car like myself in a space like this, unlock your car and keep it unlocked. You're going to have the windows cracked open. So God forbid if something did happen to your battery, and obviously if the battery's dead, you're not able to get into your car. So it is a good idea to keep the car unlocked. Granted, as I mentioned, the space that you keep it in, if you don't feel comfortable keeping it unlocked, that's up to you. But keeping your car unlocked is going to allow you the ability to get into your car. Even with the windows cracked open, you still have accessibility. The next step is to care for your tires. So there's two things that I like to do. One, I like to either park them on carpet squares or some type of foam pad so it prevents any flat spotting. I have Swiss tracks. This is a plastic flooring, so it is off the concrete, so I don't have to worry about that. But if you do park your car on concrete, I do recommend getting some carpet squares, some remnants or something. You can go to a carpet store. They have some 2x2 squares that you can purchase for very, very cheap. Park your car on them. It's going to prevent flat spots. And the main reason why it's a good idea to keep your tires off of concrete is because concrete expands and contracts based on the weather. And if your tires are touching the cold concrete, they're going to expand and contract, potentially losing air in your tire, causing flat spots, and you don't want that to happen. We're going to roll right into the next one, and I recommend actually inflating your tires up 2 or 3 PSI from where you keep it. I keep my tires at 33 PSI, usually 33, 34, and I like to inflate it up about 2 PSI, so I bring them around 35. We all know that tires or rubber kind of expands and contracts as well, so you're going to lose some pressure over the colder months. Granted, I am on Swiss tracks. It still can happen just in the air. So again, I keep it at around 33 PSI, so I usually inflate to around 35 just to kind of give me some wiggle room during the colder months so it's not going, super low and giving a chance for the tires to cause a flat spot. All right, so the next step that I like to do is put the car on a battery tender. Now there's multiple ways to go about doing this, multiple different options, multiple different battery tenders out there. I have tried several different ones over the years, and ultimately I landed on the one that I'm going to show you in a second. Now, keep in mind, the F80 M3 has a lithium-ion battery. Much more expensive battery, so if you don't do anything that I am mentioning in this video, this is one thing that I 110% recommend. If you're storing your car for an extended period of time, whether it's 2, 3, 4, 5 plus weeks, I recommend getting a battery tender. These batteries are $1,000+ to replace, plus you got to get them recoated in from BMW, or if you have the ability to do it yourself. It's not the cheapest thing in the world. It's not your basic $200-300 battery or so, in a basic car, basic lead battery. So I do recommend getting a battery tender, battery charger to make sure that it is staying healthy and it's ready to go when you do take the car out finally. Now, as you can see here, I have a few different options. I actually have another option that is an older one that I used to use on my E46 M3. It was a very, very popular one that a lot of people used, but I don't believe I have anymore. I may have tossed it a few years ago, but these are the two that I have. Now, the difference between these two is obviously the brand, but one is for lead batteries only, and the other supports lithium ion. And it's very, very important to find a battery tender that supports lithium ion. So for example, if I put a lead battery tender, battery charger on a lithium ion battery, it can actually damage it. So you want to make sure you're doing the right one. This one I used for many years, CTEK, it's a very popular brand. This one only supports lead batteries. So if I were to put this on my M3, it would potentially damage the battery and I would have to replace it. I used this one for years. It worked well. It kept the battery charged on previous cars, but I did notice that the actual component, this piece right here, it did get pretty warm when it was on. Not that it really was a bad thing, but it always kind of worried me about how warm this got. I always put my head on the pillow at night and was like, I hope nothing happens. Thankfully, nothing did, and it worked very, very well. But I always noticed this did get pretty warm when it was charging previous cars with a lead battery. So when I got my M3, I was like, you know what? CTEK is great, but let me try something else. So I started doing some research and I came across this brand that a lot of people were recommending. This is the Noco Genius 10. So the great thing about this one is it supports both normal lead batteries as well as lithium ion. So you can see right here, lithium. Very, very important, as I mentioned. And this is actually cheaper than the CTEK. The price of these is around $130, $140 or so, but it goes on sale very often. You can get it for under $100 pretty often. And I've been incredibly happy with this one. The readout on here, all the lights are super easy to read. As I mentioned, you can do lead batteries, you can do lithium, you can do multiple different types of batteries with this. It looks fantastic. It actually has quite a bit more weight to it as well, so it feels much more quality. It comes with some great accessories as well, like the CTEK, where you can kind of wire up a permanent solution. Well, not a permanent, but a temporary permanent where you can just plug it in. You don't have to use these prongs. I prefer these on the F80, and I'll go over that in a little bit, but I've been really happy with the Noco Genius 10. This is a very popular product that people ask me about. I always recommend them to them. They've been super happy with them. So if you're looking for a battery tender for your M3, highly recommend this one. All right, so I'm actually going to show you how to hook this up because this does cause a little bit of confusion. Despite how pretty straightforward this whole thing is, I want to go over it because some people do get confused, and especially on an F80 M3, some people have some questions. I get it very often, so I'm going to walk you through it. So the first thing that you actually want to do is plug it in. You don't want to connect terminals or do anything like that first. You want to make sure you plug it in like so. Then as you can see, it lights up, and then you're going to see the little power button or the little power light light up. And then we're going to go over to the battery terminal. Now, the battery on the F80s and F82s and most M cars are located in the trunk. But for me personally, I park my car forward, and the great thing is they allow you to be able to gain access to the battery charger ports or battery charger terminals from either direction. Personally, I think the engine bay one is the best one just because it's super simple. You don't have to remove any panels or anything. It's all right here. So we're gonna look under here. We're gonna look on this, the passenger fender right here. This is normally red. I have mine paint matched to mineral gray. You guys have seen me do a video on this, but we're simply just going to open it up and you're gonna see the positive battery terminal. This runs all the way down the passenger side of the car to the battery, which is really nice to have that option there. If you're looking for the negative terminal, we're gonna come down here and you're gonna see this little piece right here. This is actually the negative terminal. So now that we got it plugged in, I'm going to take my positive terminal first and I'm going to hook that up to the positive terminal right here. So gotta put it nice and low. There's kind of a little divot in here that you can kind of work that in just like that. And then what I like to do is take all the extra wire and kind of tuck it in the fender here just to keep it nice and clean and no random wires hanging anywhere or anything like that. And then we're going to take the negative terminal, connect it to that little point right there. If this is the first time you're using it, you're going to actually select the mode. Now, once you select it, it's always going to stay on this one. So I'm just doing it for the video purpose, but we're going to select lithium. And then now you can see the little charging port light up. So it's not blinking in person. That's just on the video, the frequency. So as you can see, that one is lit up, and as it charges, it's going to move up the little scale here. And once it gets to the big light right here, it's going to be green. Super easy to read, whereas the C-Tech was a little bit harder to read. They were just orange lights. These are much easier to read. So it remains red, and then once it gets here, oh, as you can see, it bumped up one. And once it gets here, it turns green, and you know it's charging. Now, this retains the charge, so once it reaches the full charge, it's going to tend to it. It's not going to keep charging it. It turns off. Then once it gets below, it's going to turn back on. So that is what a battery tender does. It keeps it charged without overcharging in a way. So that is hooked up, but I take it one step further, is take a very soft microfiber towel, whatever you want to use, and hang it over the passenger headlight. So as you can see under here, the fender that points over the headlight, I kind of tuck it under there. And then the wire hangs right over the headlight, mainly because I don't want the wire touching the paint. Now, I personally don't think it's going to scratch the paint, in the long run, but I like to take the necessary precautions and go a little above and beyond. So putting a little towel here, I think just is, doesn't take that much time, and it prevents any scratching or marring from happening because we're going to move on to the next step. Now, normally I take the tender and I put it on the ground here. So as you can see, it kind of hangs down, and then I close the hood. The main reason why I close the hood is because we're going to put a car cover on it. We'll go over that in a little bit, but the next step that I like to do is close the hood. You don't want to actually completely close it. What you want to do is just lightly put it down so it's not actually locked in the mechanism, simply just like so. So it's just kind of sitting on top of the little hooks, so it's not clipped in or anything. You can simply just pick it right up like that. And the main reason is because obviously we have the positive and negative terminals there, and I don't want it to damage the hood, and I want to keep access to the battery wire, the terminals, if I ever need to. So that is typically how I leave it. Usually I actually plug it over on that side so there's no wire coming across here, but just for the sake of the video, I wanted to show you it plugged in. Just a quick little update here. As you can see, it is pretty much charged up. These lights go out, the first three red ones, and the green only shows when it's fully charged, but I figured I would show you that. Very easy to read, kind of hard to see on camera since it is blinking, but in person, it is a solid color and works really, really well. All right, so the last and final step that I do when I store my car, or even after I wash it and I know I'm not driving it right away, is I put a car cover on it. And the cover that I use and that you guys have seen in multiple videos and pictures and on my social media is an indoor car cover. It does not protect the car from weather. The main reason why I put a cover on here is because, one, it keeps the dust, grime off of the car, off the paint. So, this is kind of our main entrance and exit of the house. We're constantly going in and out. This is my wife's car, so we're constantly in here, moving down this aisle all the time. So with the garage door open, I like to keep the paint as clean as possible. And with the cover that I'm going to show you in a second over here, it does a really nice job at keeping all that dust and grime off of the paint. So anytime that I do take it off when I'm ready to drive it, it looks perfectly clean. Now, I'm not going to put it on this video just because the car I've been driving it is not clean, but I'll throw up a video of me putting it on so you guys can see it. But the really nice thing about this one is that it is form-fitting. I was looking for a cover that was thin enough to allow the paint and the car to breathe, especially with the windows open, to keep the flow of the air moving so nothing gets stale or anything like that, and also offers a little bit of protection. I have 3 kids, so we're always walking down here, as I mentioned. Things happen, kids bump into the doors once in a while, but having that layer of protection, whether it's a really thick cover or something like this, which I'll show you in a sec, is worth its weight in gold. So it makes me sleep better at night knowing something is on the car, protecting it somewhat. Now, if you take a screwdriver and you walk down it with the cover on it, it's going to scratch the paint. I think it's going to happen with any cover, but it still offers that type of protection. My kids are well trained and they understand to kind of stay away from the car, so they're not going to, bump up against it. But things happen, they're all young, and even myself, once in a while, if I'm carrying something in, it can happen. So having that layer of protection is always really nice. So when I was looking for a car cover, I was actually looking for one, as I mentioned, that was form-fitting. I wanted something that kept the shape of the car so you can see it while it's stored, but also, again, was breathable and it had some type of protection. I came across this one and I have been super, super happy with it. It's been fantastic. I have recommended this cover to so many people over the years and so many people have been happy. This is the same cover that I used on my STI. So it fits that with the giant wing. I also use this on my buddy's G80 M3 that was in here for a period of time. Fits that car as well. And as you guys can tell, it fits the F80 as well. So this fits multiple types of cars. There's different sizes, but the one that I have linked below is the one that I personally use, and it's great. I will say that they did update it. This one does not have the mirror pockets, so there's no little kind of sleeves that go over the mirrors. It just kind of form fits around it. The new one does have the mirror pockets, so you will see a little bit of a difference there. But if we look on the exterior, it is super, super thin, nice and breathable. And on the interior of it, it is fleece lined. So it's super, super soft against the paint. It comes in a nice little carrying bag. I have it out right now because I'm planning to put it on in the next day or so after I wash the car. But as you can see, the elastic around here, so it form fits around the car super, super well. It actually has a tag here to tell you which is the front, which is super helpful because this thing is pretty big and it can get a little confusing. But also if you're looking for a size as well, they have a tag here that says sedan and it says size D. So I believe they changed the sizing terms as well. But the one that I am linking below, the updated one is M car, I believe it's called, M sedan, I forget what it's called, but it's linked below if you guys want to pick it up. It fits really, really well. They also updated it with some hooks on the bottom of it, so you can hook it around if you wanted to. But I recommend just cutting those off so it doesn't, interfere with the paint or anything like that. Plus, I would never use hooks on a car cover. It fits really well. It covers everything all the way from the front lip all the way to underneath the exhaust, so you don't see any part of the car. The only thing you see is the bottom part of the tire, which is obviously totally fine. You can't get one that's going to go all the way to the ground, but it covers everything that you need to stay protected and covered. And I've been so happy with that cover. It works great. It is not that expensive. It's around 120 bucks or so. It goes on sale every so often as well, just like the battery tender. So you can pick this up pretty cheap. I've seen some very, very expensive ones that honestly I don't think is any better than that one. I've had some other really expensive brands as well. I've had a California car cover for my E46 M3. It was okay. I personally like this one much better. So if you're looking for a very reasonable car cover that keeps the air moving, gives some type of protection, has that nice form fit, and also looks really cool, keeps your paint protected, keeps the dust off, I cannot recommend it enough. So that for me is the steps that I take to store my car. Now, as I mentioned, I maybe store it for 4 or 5, maybe 6 weeks at a time. I really start getting ants in my pants after that amount of time. It depends on the weather. If it's warmer during those weeks, I'll take it out. But if it's cold, there's brine or salt on the road, this car does not go out. It stays in here to stay nice and perfect. But if you are storing your car for an extended period of time, I know people live in other environments that the weather is just crappy all winter long and they just want to keep the car indoors protected on the battery tender. There's a couple other steps that you can actually do. One, you can actually put some fuel additive in there. I don't personally do that because of the time that I store my cars. It's not that long, but you can throw some fuel preserver in there that's going to help preserve the grade of the fuel, but also filling it all the way up is going to help as well. I've seen people do that. I can't recommend a brand because I personally have never used it and never found the need, but there's some really nice ones out there that you can throw in there to help preserve the gasoline that is in the tank. Another thing that you can do is throw some mothballs into the car, although that is kind of a 50-50 option because I've seen people say it works, but also I've seen people say that it actually attracts rodents. So I don't know what to believe, but there are some deterrents and some things that you can put in the car that will keep rodents and animals away if you were to store your car, not in an environment like this, outside or in a, much more exposed environment. Depends. I can't comment if they're any good or not or recommend anything personally because I've never had to use them and I don't have a rodent problem in my personal space, but those are extra things that you can do if you are storing it for longer than I do. Another thing that you can actually do is jack the car up, take the wheels off. You can even take the battery completely out if you want to, if you're storing it for much longer, just to keep the car completely off the ground. Obviously, it's up to you. Jack stands, quick jack, whatever you want to do. But those are the few extra steps that you can do if you're storing it for longer than I do. Also, a very worthy mention, this is my little space heater that I keep in the garage. It is Wi-Fi enabled. So I turn this on about 20 or 30 minutes before I head into the garage. Now, my space is a 20 by 20, so it's not the most massive space in the world. And if you do have something bigger, I would recommend something a little bit more serious than this. But it is currently 24 degrees out. Threw the heater on about 20 or 30 minutes before I came out here, and it's currently 58 in here. To me, super comfortable, works really well, keeps the space nice and comfortable. If I leave this on for about an hour, it gets into the 60s, which personally is about t-shirt and short weather for me. So I'm out here working in short sleeves in the middle of winter when outside is about 20. Now my space is indeed insulated, so it's going to obviously help if you have your space insulated. But I thought I would mention that. Really, really worthy mention. This thing has been fantastic. It's only like $100. Yes, you can go ahead and get yourself a gas heater, a proper gas heater hooked up, at the top of your garage. But $100, Wi-Fi enabled, works really well, at least for me. And as you can see, it's 58 in here and it's currently 24. I have actually done a video on this with my STI back in the day, going over the procedure. It's actually pretty similar to what I do now, but I thought it would be nice to update you guys, go over the new battery tender that I do use, go over everything, show you how to use it, and go over the steps that it takes, or what I do personally to store my F80 M3 at this point in time in my personal garage here. I thought it would be helpful because I do get this question very, very often. So again, as I mentioned, everything that I named in this video, I will leave a link below. So if you want to pick it up and kind of take the steps that I do, you can use all the links below to store your car just the way that I do. But that is going to do it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was helpful. If you guys have any questions at all, be sure to ask them below. But in the meantime, keep it clean, keep it simple. I'll catch you guys in the next one.